first millionth of a second, the fireball is 500 feet across. Within 10 seconds, it would grow to over 1 mile.
The temperature would rise to 20 million degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than the surface of the sun. The blast would generate winds in excess of 650 miles an hour. Forces of that magnitude can destroy anything that people can build.
Strongest buildings would be reduced to rubble. Tens of square blocks would just be melted, would just be evaporated.
Everything would be vaporized. The buildings, the cars, the trees, the people, the upper level of the earth itself.
There were 76,000 buildings in Hiroshima. 70,000 of them were destroyed. The hospitals, the fire stations, the communication equipment, the military installations, everything just flattened.
The first 5 to 6 miles, virtually everyone in that 5-mile radius is going to die. Somewhere between 3 and 4 million people dead immediately in the first 5 miles.
If you're lucky enough to be 8 or 9 miles away from the blast, then you would experience it as blast effects, windows being shattered.
You'd have to shatter every window and turn it into hundreds of missiles flying outward from the center of the explosion at speeds more than 100 miles per hour.
After the blast, it's the firestorms that would just combust everything in sight.
Everything flammable would burn. Paper, cardboard, cloth, heating oil, gasoline, everything would ignite.
Whole blocks would catch fire.
Hundreds of thousands of fires would coalesce into a giant firestorm, 11 miles across.
Everything catches on fire, then there's no air to breathe.
All the oxygen would be consumed, and everyone would die.
It is useless to talk about will you die because you're burned to death or because you've been blown to bits by the blast.
Anyone looking in the direction of the nuclear explosion, they will be blinded.
Lungs ruptured by the pressures, or eardrums ruptured by the pressure. Crush injuries from buildings falling onto them, or broken bones when they've been thrown through the air against buildings.
Hundreds of thousands, possibly even millions, would die from the fallout.
The body does have a repair rate for radiation, but the doses are so heavy and coming so quickly that it will overwhelm the body's repair mechanisms. The 450 to 700 rad dose kills you because it wipes out your blood cells. Over 3,000 rads, you will go into seizures, immediate coma, and you will die within a matter of minutes to hours.
Most of the doctors are going to be dead. Most of the nurses are going to be dead. Most of the hospitals are going to be destroyed. Huge numbers of casualties and no medical equipment.
There will be a need for antibiotics, tens of units of blood per person.
There won't be any electrical power.
Vast amounts of intravenous fluid to sustain people who've been burned, just burned.
You couldn't treat all the burn victims.
And then at a certain point, the casualties become so high, it's pointless to try to make any sense out of it. The doctor in the Red Cross hospital who turns into an automaton, binding, swabbing, daubing, binding, swabbing, daubing. And that's what descended on the physicians and nurses in Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Someone would surely claim they had 10 more that were already hidden somewhere, and they'd start setting them off unless their demands were met.
Every other big city is going to wonder whether they might be a target.
Public panic, people fleeing major cities. You could forget about rules about search and seizure. You're going to have to be searching everywhere. You can forget about civil liberties when people realize a whole city was just destroyed.
Take the Bill of Rights, you put it up on a shelf, and you might never see it again. People would be demanding draconian measures to make sure that another city didn't go up.
Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Every man, woman, and child lives under a nuclear sword of Damocles, hanging by the slenderest of threads.